I will sing unto Yahweh, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider hath he cast into the sea. Yah is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. Yahweh is a man of war.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study today in Ecclesiastes chapter 7. We're going to pick up our study at 18, but we're going to, because if you look at this verse, it really is going back, looking back. So let's look back to chapter 7. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vanity. Surely oppression maketh the wise mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider. God also hath set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life, in his wickedness. Be not righteous overmuch, neither make thyself overwise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? It is good that thou shouldest take hold of this. Yea, also, from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise, more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. For there is not a just man upon the earth that doeth good, and sinneth not. Also take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. For ofttime also thine own heart knoweth that thou thyself likewise hast cursed others. All this have I proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise. But it was far from me. that which is far off and exceeding deep, who can find it out? I applied mine heart to know, and to and to seek out wisdom, and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even the foolishness of madness. And I find more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands as bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Behold, this have I found, saith the preacher, counting one by one to find out the account, which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. Interesting. Do I have? Oh, I thought for a second I had no more text. We're not going to continue reading because we will do well if we get through this. All the way down to it's not a ton of verses, but we've read a lot. It's a lot to take in, and there's a lot of wisdom here. So I don't think we're going to get through chapter 8. So we're not even going to touch it. These verses, be not righteous over much. And I talked about that because as Jesus said, and just before the study, I brought this up because I was like, I want to show them the scripture. All right. Luke 16:8. And the Lord commended the unjust steward. This is the parable of the unjust steward, one of the most interesting parables in my opinion, because of the way that people stumble at it, which is interesting. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. There is a level of analysis in which righteous behavior seems stupid. Like Jesus getting himself killed. Was it really worth it to drive out the money changers? I don't know, he overthrew the Roman Empire in a certain sense. He conquered them. He conquered them, ultimately. And so, whatever you want to say, I believe in the resurrection of the dead, and that Jesus himself rose from the dead. But even if he didn't, he certainly destroyed those who tried to destroy him. It's like no one believes in Romanism anymore. But they do believe in Jesus. Now, some might say that, I'm not anti... I don't like to go around smiting my brethren, especially the ones that I have little knowledge of or less experience of. Like I said, to me, oftentimes, it's a question of, you say you believe certain things. That does not impress me. You believe in one God. Well, the demons also believe and tremble. To me, that verse really means that, it isn't so important if I believe the stories are literally true. Whether you do that or not is not as important as, do you tremble at his word? At this word. That this is how men ought to be. Men ought not to do these things. This is the right way. Men ought, his conclusion to those verses, to you know what? The children of this world are wiser. Save your skin. Don't sacrifice yourself for the kingdom of heaven or for the next generation. Because even though it's I've lived a lot of life, I've enjoyed a lot. And it's I'm willing to lay my life down for the future generations. I am. I will die for them. I've already had enough. I've had lots of good. And to see to it that they obtain good, I will lay my life on the line. Yes. Though I'm terrified, I will not be afraid. I will not hesitate. That is the truth that I know. That's the thing. That's the weapon in my heart that I know my enemies cannot overcome. It's my true faith. Because I believe in it. It's even if God isn't real, I will obey this word. to the very last in the hope that it is so. And I will trust it because it is the right thing to do, to obey what the Lord says. Yes. Take hold of this. Withdraw not thy hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. Because he knows there is a day of judgment. You can save your skin for a while, and in your generation that may be wiser. Go along to get along. But what are you doing? How are you sacrificing the future by your complicity in this evil? What kind of world are you creating for your children and grandchildren, or my children and grandchildren if you don't have any? And you should care about them, because I care about other people's kids. I don't think you have to have kids to care about people's kids and about the future. You don't have to. Paul cared about everybody, it seemed. The Apostle Paul, he had no wife, no family, but he cared about people. That is not like a tall order. Well, it is a tall temptation, though, isn't it? When you have nothing to care about, it's easy to just, who cares? Just serve myself. That's the thing. But you don't have to have, for me, it did take that. I had to have a family. And like I said, when you look at your grandchildren, there are things that like when I was young, my firstborn son almost died. And in that process, my childhood also died. It's like I was never the same again. It's like something in me that was free and carefree and only thinking about the here and now perished forever. And you know what? It needs to die. Sometimes things have to die. You just have to accept it. It's like I love little children, my own grandchildren, my children, but it's like I want them to grow up. As cute as they are when they're small, it's like that's just the potential. When people stay small forever, it's a tragedy. I've seen people who are inhibited both in their physical development and their mental development. And it never is like, oh, how wonderful, you're that forever. No. There can be love and beauty in that, but it's also tragic. And there's no denying it. But anyways, there's a wisdom in this world that says, oh, this is how you should do because it's what's best for you. But there's a greater wisdom that is not just about what's best for you, but is about also what's best for those who come after you and also for the kingdom, okay? Because I don't just limit it to just heaven, because I don't like that. I think that is a bad impulse. Jesus was very clear. He wanted to come and find us setting the fires that he intended to be set and not just lollygagging about the place, pleasuring ourselves in sort of ignorance of what's really happening. I mean, unless you want to be part of the great whore, and they don't even understand what the great whore is because they don't think, well, that couldn't. I remember when I was a kid, not a kid. I was a kid. I was a teenager. We had this. I've got it out in the barn. Sometime I'll bring it. It's called Dark Secrets of the New Age. The New Age movement. That's the great whore. Christians going to New Age beliefs and to other things like Buddhism and or here's the thing. Why are they departing the faith? Like, well, what is it? It's like just like when people hate us. Why do they hate us? And why have your children abandoned the faith? Why do they hate it? It's because it's been corrupted. They've been taught like a bizarre version of the faith. Most of my, when I think about the people I know, they weren't necessarily raised up in a paranoid Christian family. Like people who, that is not a recipe for faithful children. If you don't have enough faith to trust that God is looking after your kids and also being responsible, I mean, like I said, I don't know. There's so much ignorance with people. It's sad. Like I said, it's like the first most important things we have to take care of is our closest relationships. For me, it's my wife and then my children and then my extended family. My brothers, my father, my mother, my sister, my cousins, and go on and on and on. And then my neighbor. Of course, my neighbors also. Especially those of the household of faith, as it said. If we fear God, we know we have an obligation to them all. Even to my enemies, because my enemy might be my future friend. I don't know who my enemy, if I wield a great and flaming sword, I might enlighten this fellow. So I will, I mean, do I know what I'm talking about or not? Do I have anything to offer or do I? Maybe I don't. But the point is like, through fear of God, I will be shown the wisest, than those who, they think, oh, well, just the short term. Oh, the short term. It's like, we already know that. I mean, do I like, is that something you're going to wait to the future to find out is true? No, it's true. Though in the short term, it's painful because the wicked in the short term do their will. And while the repercussions are generational and the judgment of God is not instantaneous, it waits till the end of the world. I mean, it's like God's judgment. It's like you don't get to see any of that till the whole darn thing is over. In the meantime, you just got to sit and eat all the evil that they do and just stand up and be righteous in the midst of it. If you want to live, don't be over righteous. It's true. And also be over wicked. Like if you're too bad, men will come and take you away and kill you. That's what happens. Or if you're a fool, you die before your time. It happens, I mean, it can happen to you even if you're not guilty, but if you play the fool, you will find out. Fool around and find out. FAFO, right? They use a different verb, don't they? Yes, the fear of God is better than all. Solomon, by his wisdom, knows that. Even though he doesn't know the future, he sees that wisdom of man and that there's a truth in it, but also that it's mistaken in its long-term perspective. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise more. And that's what's wrong with our country, by the way. It's like we don't take a long-term perspective. The problem is people right now are cashing in. They're cashing in and leaving the bill to our children and grandchildren. And that's obscene. And I am so enraged by it, I will certainly spend my days doing something about it. Okay? I'm certainly doing what I only wield a great flaming sword. I only have that. But that will be enough. I promise you. It is always enough. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. I don't live in your little city, you 10 mighty men. It's interesting symbolic numbering there. The 10 commandments, 10 men, 10 pillars, 10 this, 10 that. 10 is an ordinal perfection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're done, right? Everyone knows 10, 9. We count down and up from 10 because we have a decimal system in our mathematical mentality. And so that is important in a certain sense because even like you think of the Romans, it's that X for 10. 10 is like a milestone. XX 20. And it's doubtless has something to do with our biology, of course, because we have 10 fingers and it works out great. And honestly, though, if we were different, like we do in base 8, we would think base 8 totally made sense. I've played with a little. Base 8 is not insane. We already have a base 60 system. That's actually the clock and the degrees. That goes back. Is that the Sumerians? I forgot who initiated that. That's very ancient. It's a different base, as we're counting as far as degrees and all that stuff. But it makes sense within its own realm. Anyway, so I don't, but specifically, do I know what this means? Well, how so one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 flight? It's often a 10 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. It's that hyperbole of, hey, there are no odds that you can't overcome using wisdom, or at least to say that the enhancement of wisdom is so much better than the enhancement of might. Because wisdom can overcome might. As I say, it's like, I remember Joe Biden talking about how, you can't go against the U.S. government. You need F-16s, and we got nuclear bombs. It's like, what, you're going to bomb Shannon for my sake? You know what I mean? I have freedom of speech. You have to do a lot to stop me. I have a lot of power, especially when it comes to the word. I have a great and flaming sword, which I will use. Yes. And it will set flames on fire, and they will be angry. Be angry. Come at me. 10 mighty men. Your might is nothing before the word of the Lord. The word of the Lord is so much better than the might of mighty men from the city. And they're gathered, they got their hand joined in hand. They'll hand join in hand with that verse from Isaiah. But no good will come of it. That's my version of it. That's not what it's. They'll hand join in hand. Nothing good will come. What it's saying is the plans of men are easily frustrated and destroyed. And what city is that? That wicked city. You know what I mean? Like the symbolic city. Because he's saying the city. What's it? The city. That city that reigneth over the kings of the earth. That abominable city. That wicked and wretched city. Washington, D.C. That's the wicked city right now. That's the evil city. And 10 men or however, 600 congressmen and 100 senators, not much. They're all corrupt, blackmailed, and worthless. Not all. Thomas Massey and some others I don't know of. There's some people of fidelity up there. But it's a wicked city. And where Satan's seat is, you only have a few names which have not defiled themselves. No. Satan's seat is mighty and corrupt and wicked. And we must plunge a sword into its heart. The sword of God's word. Because the beast must be wounded. It's incumbent on every Christian to wound the beast. To tear it down with your words. To speak against it. That it should be, because if that's what, whatever. I said it's like, I love my country, but I will not let it be run by these wicked, corrupt people who are just out there to loot the world and use our power and wealth. I mean, they already have. We've already failed. Now only comes the consequences. Or is it too late? Well, hey. You got to live as if there's always hope, because there's no point in living any other way. It's like, I will go down in flames, brother. Not, no, not hiding, not whimpering, but bellowing forth the word of the Lord. Now there is not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. That is an axiomatic truth, okay? There are just men. Okay, there are just men, the spirits of just men made perfect. There are people who are on balance, you know what I mean? Now, here's the thing with Christianity. We get so obsessed with believing in Jesus that we ignore all the things Jesus says about how he's going to judge things. That many from the east and west will come and sit down in God's kingdom, and the way he accepted Cornelius and all that. It's like the idea that there are people out there who he will not accept at his white throne judgment, because they are on balance, good people who do good, but are not sin-free. That's why he laid his life down. Even if they haven't heard of it, ultimately, I believe that comes to them. That's my opinion. I'm not saying that dogmatically, but on a certain level, I don't know how to talk to people otherwise, as far as it doesn't, to me, that dogmatism is the same kind of mentality that Satan brought forth when he tempted Jesus to jump off the temple. It's like, no, it says, if you believe in your heart to God, then you will be saved. So nobody else ever could possibly ever. It's like, even though it says this white judgment where he's going to open up the books and look what they said and sort of take out the scales of justice and just do justly. He's going to be like, well, you never heard of Jesus. F you. Die. Go to eternal torment. That's what's going to happen. Well, if you're going to be dogmatic about literally, taking a lot, I don't even know if you can build that case I really don't believe that case is there to be made. So I'm just sort of like, I don't think it's there. I mean, there's a part of a case, but it's not a good one. I mean, you can make a good case for something, you can make a bad case. I can make a good argument, or I can make a crummy argument. I said, you can make an argument for a young earth. They're terrible. They're not good arguments, but they're arguments. There's something there. You got to analyze these things and figure out, okay, is this something I should trust or not? Okay, so people are not, even just people, even people who are overall good, do sin. They miss the mark. That's what sin means. It means to not be completely on target. We know that when he appears, we will be like him. But for the time being, we are not. It's like I'm a fallible sinner like any other man, but I am not a person whose life is characterized by sin. I've turned my life over to Jesus, over to justice, over to righteousness, to the King of righteousness, the King of kings. And so I am a just man. I am not a wicked man. I'm a just man. I do good, but not without sinning. That's what it is. It's like the people are like that. It's like I trust in Jesus for my salvation. I know I could not possibly ever be worthy of everlasting life. No one is. That is not to say anyone at the white throne judgment who would, on balance, be judged as worthy of everlasting life. It's not that they earned it. It's just that he judged it so, and he had mercy. And that's how I believe it works. That's my own opinion. That ultimately, that white throne judgment is not just all death. The idea, like, why did it get put there like that? To me, being a Christian, it's like, well, what advantage hath the Christian? We have committed the oracles of God. Can other people also be saved? Then why be a Christian? That's a good question. Why be a Christian? It's a path of pain and suffering and potential death. A path of suffering. Of going into that ultimate fear with the Lord Jesus. It's not necessarily for everyone, but it is a great and high calling. That's what it is to me. This great and high calling of the Lord Jesus Christ. You saw what he did. That's what being a Christian is all about. It's about standing up for the truth, even if it means they crucify you. So are you ready for that, Christian? If you're not, I don't know what you think you believe. You believe in Jesus? Really? You do? I doubt you, brother. I doubt you. I love this verse. Also take heed to all. Don't listen to every word that is spoken. Hey, if you've ever been married, you figure this out. Right? Anyone who's married, or even you don't have to be married, but marriage is it's like I said, you don't have to have kids to learn things, but it's like a shortcut. Like you don't have to have grandkids to come to a certain realization, but it like hits you like a ton of bricks. So like, there's an easy way and a hard way to learn things. There's a fast way and a short way, or I just did synonyms. But there's there are ways to learn through thought processes where you have to think about it. You have to empathize and like put yourself in another man's shoes and say like, okay, what if I had kids? And you can get to the same place, but you have to actually do the work mentally. If you don't do that, you have to actually experience it. And then it happens to you mentally like a traumatic experience, honestly, like my first child almost dying, getting run over by a truck. These are little things that happened to me. These are traumatic things. It wasn't that bad. It was just my leg. It should be I got hit by a truck and then run over it. I also got hit by a train, but the train didn't run over me, so that was good. And it was moving very slow. Anyways, I'm not kidding. Just like I said, I almost took God's uppercut once because I was cutting down a tree and it barber chaired right in front of me. Look at barber chaired tree. It's when the tree breaks and it suddenly sends the back end up, and it passed right in front of my face as I leapt backwards, narrowly missing me. I almost took the Lord's uppercut, as I called it, because that would have been the end. That would have been lights out for me. I don't like to tempt the Lord, but Lord, he likes to show me how close I am to tempting him. I love this part about, like, don't listen to everything they say, lest you hear your servant curse you. Because here's the thing. Come on. You ever been working? Oh, son of a bucket. He just makes me so mad. And sometimes people just gripe and grumble to themselves. And, the Lord hears the murmuring of the wicked and all that. It's like, but you know what? On a certain level, the beauty is that, like, men will give account of every idle word they have spoken. I believe that. But also, it's possible that that the Lord will also overlook those things. I mean, some people deserve to have their idle words held against them because of all the evil they've done and all the wicked ways they've treated other people. And they sort of deserve to have everything they said brought up and said, well, you also said this, you also did that. And every bit persecuted down to the minutest detail, the ultimate torture in a sense. You know what I mean? Because I like that in, understanding it in a, what does that actually do? Why is that emblematic of anything? Why does that symbol mean something? It's important. Anyways, Torture, I'm speaking of. But, don't, in a sense, but like, here's the thing. As a master, just like the Lord Jesus, he is gracious and forgiving, and my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It talks about him being an austere man. But also, here's the thing. If you are putting in the effort, he is an easy Lord to please. He is so gracious and so kind. He is not that austere man. Unless you are just a complete derelict of your duty. You want to just ignore the Lord Jesus and tell him to F off, and I don't need to know any of that stuff. If you actually mean that, you are none of his. That's just not acceptable before him. You cannot say, I accept and reject Lord Jesus at the same time. It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like accepting Jesus. They act like that's just like, well, yeah, that all happened. That's not what it means. So he had a lot of stuff to say, and like he represents something. He represents something. It's not just a friggin' brand. It's not just Coca-Cola. I'm on your damn team. Sorry. Damn team, all right. Coca-Cola. Nothing against Coke or Pepsi. I don't drink that garbage. None of you should. You drink water and maybe a little wine for the good of your stomach. I don't know. I shouldn't. All I know is it never did my stomach any good at all. Except for the worry, and I get it, what Paul's talking about there. Like I said, I don't forbid such things. You have a conscience. Use it. I'm not here to lay down the law for you. I love Paul. That's what I love about Paul. He recognized the fact that like he is not going to be the new Moses. He doesn't try to be. Though sometimes people treat him like he is. Even though it's a weird thing where it's like you get this Paul as Moses versus Paul as libertine. You know what I mean? Like that juxtaposition of like, the works of the flesh and the fruit of the spirit. It's like, people have trouble navigating that space and understanding like, well, what is the true relationship between my obedience and faith and salvation? It's like, one of the things I always thought it was more important to be concerned about raising my kids right than about, raise up a child in the way that he ought to go and he will not depart from it, than about getting them to agree to some sort of contractual obligation about, I mean, it gets down to being like that. Like, take out this insurance policy with Jesus. It feels icky and like a salesman. I mean, I am not a peddler of Jesus. I am a follower of Jesus. To me, it's like my only preaching of the gospel is my life. Well, I do preach the gospel, of course. But I mean, I consider my life to be the ultimate testimony. I believe these things because you can literally look at how I've lived and what I've followed in my own, faulty way, right? There's not a just man that doesn't sin. And that doesn't mean you should excuse those sins. You should move on from those sins. I fight against, Paul said, you have not you have not come to blood resisting sin or something like that. Not quite. Well, I mean, honestly, just about. I remember Jesus sweating great drops of blood in Gethsemane. I haven't quite been that vexed, but it certainly has vexed me. I don't allow it to be you never want to be complacent. A fool is complacent. Complacency, the Bible, everywhere I look, nope. Do not rest on your laurels. Do not become an old wineskin. Always be a new wineskin. Be ready for something new, better, and more true. It's just be ready. It's like because I've accepted something doesn't mean I knew anything. It's like now I'm defending my own decision. That's not righteousness. It's pride. I said I'll be wise, but it was far from me. Oh, yes. I will be wise. Let's be wise. And then I'm a fool. It's depressing at times. I understand. Surely. It is so, even if you're wise, the depressing part is the smarter you are. Just like I talked about that Dunning-Kruger effect, where people initially think they're really smart, but as you learn more and more about a subject, your perception of your own wisdom goes down and down. And the wiser you are, the more you feel like a fool. Because you see every mistake in its true light. You perceive all your errors very strongly. And I don't know. It doesn't prevent you from enjoying life, but it does extend life in a certain sense, because by wisdom a man can behave wisely. But ultimately, like I said, there's a limit. At some point, the fear of God will overwhelm wisdom. At least for me. It should, because it's like that. Wisdom would say, oh, turn and run. But the fear of God would say, no, I must stand. And there you go. I will be wise, but it's far from me. Sometimes it's like in a positive sense, like I was just speaking of. Like, well, I can't follow wisdom. I got to do what's right. But sometimes it's like I can't follow wisdom. The temptation is too strong. So I end up doing wrong. And that is that's like part of the disease of man. It's like our sinful nature. The best way to overcome it, in my opinion, is by being diligent in doing a lot of good things, being busy. As they say, idle hands are the devil's workshop. If you would find yourself looking at pornography and stuff like that, you need hobbies and things to do. You can't, we need to have no time for that in our lives. We need to drive it out. Like when we fill up our lives with good things, it helps drive, and it doesn't fix the temptation. But it is the best thing I find, as far as at least just so you don't have to deal with this feeling of guilt. You know what I mean? Like, because to me, it's like I can handle the fact that I'm tempted. That's fine. The fact that I want to do something and I don't always made me feel like flexing a bit. It's like, like if a woman tried to seduce me and I resisted her, I would feel like, wow, well, that was good. I always felt like it was the Lord, though, because it was not me, Lord, you. The Lord did it, because just like he says, I'm going to scroll down to that verse. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape her. I remember when we read that first part the first time, like last week, I thought to myself, I'm like, yep. And I think I pleased God at some point, because he helped me escape from all kinds of horrors. It's true. It's true. I was, the other day I was going to say, people talk about Bill Clinton and Trump grabbing women by the kitty. It's like, their women will rub their kitties against you to let you know they want you to grab it. And it's, that happens. If you're young, handsome, and charismatic like I was, that happens. That happens. But how do you escape from such things? Wow. Like Trump said, when you're a star, they let you do these things. It's like, yeah, they'll let you do these things when you have power and wealth and you're good looking. And, again, I know I'm an old man. It's like, but still, they can try to tempt you. I'm not immune from temptation, but I please God, and he delivers me from temptation. That's a beautiful thing. When the Lord delivers us out of temptation, I am always so very thankful, because I am not a perfect man. I still have fleshly weaknesses. I've always escaped, but I've always understood that God helped me, because I was surely tempted. I was surely tempted in those situations, but the Lord delivered me out of them. Thank you. Because it's like, if I had done it, like I said, Jesus said, whoso looketh on a woman to lust after her hath already committed adultery. It's like, and I take that like the angry at his brother. You got to be careful. You can be held accountable for that. You think you can just do whatever you want, think whatever you want. No, thoughts count, because out of the heart come forth all those evil things, murders, adulteries. So what goes on in our heart is a very important thing. And that is the thing. Oft times thine own heart knoweth that thou likewise has cursed others. You notice that this is very much similar to what Jesus talks about. Right? You've done the same thing. You that do the same thing are guilty of them. You hypocrite. Paul, James, everyone spoke of this in the New Testament, and it's in the Old Testament. It's not, hey, you've done the same thing. You've uttered idle words. You know what I mean? Just like the servant who was forgiven a lot, but then he went to his brother who just owed a bit. He owed a lot, and his Lord forgave him. And then he went to his fellow servant who owed just a little bit to him, pence. It was a small amount, and he threw him in prison and said, "Pay up." How you treat other people is important. Don't be a hypocrite. We've cursed others. Now again, That doesn't mean we ignore the idea of God's judgment, that there is a righteous standard, a just standard. But we want to temper that justice with mercy. Because do you want to receive judgment without mercy? I don't. As a Christian, that's what I'm actually depending on. But I don't think I think that through that, I have a first resurrection, like box seat, so to speak, and the millennial stuff. I think there are great benefits to being actually a Christian, called to that over all the religions of the world. But that doesn't mean I think that if there are truth seeking, that people who are being on balance, decent, will come to the white throne and find Jesus thereon, and he will judge things as he said he would judge them. It's not going to be just some sort of litmus test. It's like, yeah, you weren't a Christian, so burn in hell. That's just, that is not. I don't know how you'd get that out of the New Testament except through Christians, except through people mishandling the word. Just like they say, oh, God loves everybody. God so loved the world. And God this and that. And they mess up the idea that he loves, that he hates. They can't get anything straight. They don't know where the lines are. And they're to be pitied because they're blind. They're my enemies, but they're blind. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Though I may curse myself for saying that. I mean, when they, when they're in the process of humiliating or ruining me in some way, it won't feel so generous. But the Lord Jesus did. He went all the way to this crucifixion without telling everyone, hey, you've cursed out. You were taught. You were working for somebody, and you were like, so don't be too hasty to judge others. You understand you also have a judgment, and that's something Solomon understands. There is a judgment. You got to fear God. You can't just have a standard that applies only to you. Like, oh well, I can do whatever I want, but you all got to do whatever the rules are. People think they are immune from those things, and that's a foolish way to go through life. That is a fool's life. He tried to be wise, but it was difficult. It was hard to be wise. You can know wisdom and be wise, but to actually act it out is not the same. It's difficult. People have found this out for ages. It's like to know what to do is not as hard as to do the actual thing, especially when it's moral, and especially when you're facing off against temptations of the flesh and such. It is very difficult. It can be anyways. I mean, the Lord can lighten our load. He can bless us with a spirit of righteousness and holiness. That happens often to people where they give up things that they used to be tempted by, and suddenly it's like never again. And that is a beautiful thing. And it's the work of God. That which is far off is exceeding deep, and exceeding deep. Who can find? There are depths to which it is so difficult to delve. Because you can, like I said, you can spend your whole life sailing the seven seas and still not have ever plunged beneath. And even when you do then, oh my goodness, how deep the depths, the trenches, the water, the deep, all those things being analogies of the depths of God and stuff is a very good way to put it, because it is unfathomable in certain, what I mean? Like we have difficulty conceiving of it. Like when you consider of the blackness of space also, the depth of that. And we look and look and look and look and look, and there's just more and more stuff out there. I mean, obviously there's a limit. Or is there? Who can find out? I mean, what I mean is like there is an ultimate revelation. There's not just like continual questing for knowledge. At some point we have to understand, right? I believe that there is a potential to understand, that we can make sense of it all ultimately. That is how I approach the Bible. That's how I approach everything. As I thought, this can be made sense of. In parts, I confront things that if it doesn't make sense, then I want to highlight that so I can try to understand why. I apply my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things. Why do things happen? Especially in the realm of man. It's not like Solomon was not worried about why water flows downhill. He was not worried about why, like gravity exists or whatever. That's not what he means. The reason men act the way they do, the reason things fall out with men as they do, because from the beginning he says focus was on man under the sun. what is best for him? How can he best make the most of his life that he has here on earth? That's the way he's looking at this, using all the wisdom he has. What is it? What is man? What is best for man? Seek up by wisdom the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even the foolishness of madness. He went to the extremes. Like you said, he went into use the wine and foolishness. He looked into the foolishness. I've looked into foolishness, comedy movies and stuff like that. The stupidity of it all. I don't mean that that's like the whole of it, but like you said, like revelings and parties and happy things and people laughing, comedy and hilarity and all that stuff. I like to laugh, but I understand that like laughing, while is a release and it's relieving, it's like taking a dump. It's good to get that out, but it doesn't actually improve you. You know what I mean? It maybe gets something bad out of you, but it doesn't put good things into you. Maybe I'm wrong. Or let's say it's this. That the good things it puts into you are so much better and more valuable. Right? Laughter makes the heart glad. That's a good thing. I love to laugh. I like to be funny. I am a funny person, people have said. People have said so. Just from being odd, it's hard not to be. Foolishness of madness. There's a lot of the words. I'm not going to go and vex ourselves over the precise meaning of those words because we did that already, and it doesn't really matter. It's about, not right thinking. The thinking that is generally considered wrong. Oh, that's madness. He tried the things that people say, oh, don't bother. You know what I mean? And that's someone ought to go and, it's not it is, if someone didn't, you'd be wanting someone to do it so they could tell you, like, why? Why not? That's why I looked at, I never concealed the folly of my youth for my children. I didn't bring it up per se, but as they got older, I would definitely be honest about it. Because I wanted them to understand, how I got where I was. And that I went through things, I tried things, and I'm like, dude, don't do that. You can learn it the easy way by listening to me or the hard way and doing what I did. I don't think it's hypocritical for parents to say, like, hey, this is what I did. I don't advise it. Because that's the problem is, like, parents oftentimes, what they do is they try to hide their past. And like, oh, I never did that. It's like, no, don't do it. And then they become hypocrites because they're play acting. They're not explaining to their kids. The kids can understand. They aren't going to think, they'll be like, you tell them the truth. Like, yeah, man, don't ever try smoking cigarettes. Because, like, it gets a hold of you. You'll be, like, wanting to do it all the time. Like, maybe not after the first one. The first one made me nauseous and sick. I should have left it at that. But then it ended up being, like, 10 years of bondage. So, speaking of bondage, so he says, foolishness of madness. What is one of the worst things in the world? The most foolish and mad things. It's like the woman. The woman whose heart is snares and nets, the conniving, scheming, snaring, netting woman, and her hands are bands. I can see his sorrow. There's nothing worse in life than not being able to find a good woman. And this king, his experience with women was not good. They ultimately led him astray, because of their hands and their bands and all that, A man can be enslaved by a woman's charms very easily. That's why it's like temptation. It's like, I'm glad that the Lord has given me the escapes. I've always escaped. I never had a one-night stand in my life. I never did. I was questing for them. Oh, yes, I was. Didn't happen. I tell you what, that's something I'm not ashamed to admit. Didn't work out. Good. There was a time when I would have been proud of that. I was like, oh, I had a one-night stand. Oh, yes. Let me tell you about it, fellas. Yeah. Here's the thing. Like I said, be not over wise. Be not over righteous. Be not over qualified as a man. If you're too, or as a woman. Women, oftentimes they put on their makeup and this and that, and they get all hot and they look like a prostitute. And it's like, yeah, a lot of guys are not going to be interested in you. But men who can afford such things will be interested. So kings end up looking at all these women who will never make a suitable wife. They may be gorgeous, they may be this and that and the other, but they will not make, like a beautiful woman has to be kind of raised from a child and protected from the evils of this world that corrupt women. And there's a lot of things in this world trying to corrupt women. I mean, think about all the child molesters and all that shit that goes on. Sorry, swearing. Well, that is true shit, okay? I'm not going to be ashamed about using it for that. It does bring foul language to my mouth because it is such a foul subject. And it corrupts people. And then oftentimes they pass it on to others, to the children and the others and the neighborhood and all that. It's disgusting. And it's not entirely her fault, but, again, it's not entirely Solomon's fault either, but he's in a position. If you are a powerful man, there are all these really beautiful women who are lining up for you. And imagine trying to find a good woman among them. The kind of woman that will dollar herself up and be ready to sell herself to a man just because of his power and his wealth. You think that's a good wife selection category? That's why he couldn't find a woman. And that's what wisdom teaches me. I'm sorry, Solomon. Like I said, I'm wiser than the ancients. That's what the Psalm says. And I remember a guy walked out of church when I sang that because he knew I kind of felt that way, even though I never said it. I've said it here, but it's like, but it's true. I understand more than the ancients. Why? Because I have the Spirit of Jesus Christ. You think at the end of history we would understand less than they did in their day? That my understanding of God would be inferior to theirs? I mean, like, really. But it's funny, it is. Even for many people, many moderns, their understanding is much inferior to the understanding of the ancients. You know why? Because they haven't kept his word. They don't love him and keep his word to get the blessing. You have to get the blessing. If you want the blessing, you got to cling to him. You got to cling. Just like Jacob clung. I will not let you go till you bless me. I know. I will wrestle with God all night. And then in the morning when he wants to go, I'm going to say no. That's why my friends always said, Stringini he will fellowship us all under the table. That's why my Bible says are always in danger of going multi-hour. We'll do the 3 hour. I'll do the Rush Limbaugh version. We'll do 3 hours with commercial breaks, right? No commercials. I think I would need commercial breaks, actually. We would take an hourly break and come back for more, right? That would be interesting. Who wants all that? The problem is life just will not allow. Maybe someday. More bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets. How did her heart get that way? Like I said, a lot of nasty things happen to people to scar them and to make them that way. I knew girls who were raped. I knew girls who were, beautiful girls get lied to all the time. So I'm saying Solomon is choosing from a pool of abused. And it's like, this is what happens because when you're attractive in the ancient world and there aren't a lot of protections, those ladies got chewed up a lot. Okay? Oh, you go to the Capitol. You're gonna, it's like, yeah, maybe in here's the thing. Like I said, it just doesn't. It's not gonna translate into happy wife. It just doesn't. That formula is very tricky. Now, I always think that the ladies listening to my Bible study are probably excellent wife material for some gentleman somewhere, right? So it's like, because I do believe, like I said, my wife is one in a million. I put quotes around that because I actually think there are a lot better women. But the thing is, when you're a man in a powerful position, you don't see those good women. If you price yourself out of the market, you can't, like I said, and you select only from among a certain category, of course it's not going to go well. That's why I always advise my daughter, don't put on a lot of makeup. Be yourself. Let him love you the way you are. Especially because she's already beautiful enough. She doesn't need to enhance. It's unnecessary. It can be pleasing to a man. I suppose I'm just not a fan of it at all. Honestly, I haven't been for a long time. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, my wife had to put on makeup, and surely I did enjoy it. But not to the extent like I wanted to do that every day. I already knew she was beautiful. I didn't need some sort of, I didn't need to like draw bold lines. Look at right here and right there and right there. It's just, I don't know, it seems silly to me. Okay, let's see if we can finish this chapter. Yeah, that's what I've found. I've counted one by one. I went through all these women. Solomon went through a lot of women. Thankfully, I, in my wisdom, early on discovered an idea. I realized, I could eliminate a lot of these women from consideration. Like, this woman would not make a good wife. And I thought, in one conversation, I could eliminate like a lot of girls. I could have to talk to them once. Instead of thinking with my other head, I thought with the one on top of my neck. You know what I mean? Instead of thinking about how beautiful they are, I thought about like, is this the kind of person I want to deal with for the next 30 years? Is this the kind of person I'm going to enjoy having? Do I like their company? Do I like talking to them? I like to talk. Do they like to listen? And obviously my wife does because she's my one streamer. But I mean, we have other people who show up, but she's always the one. There's always one listener. That's the reason why the stream happens. If there wasn't one, I wouldn't even show up myself. Because that's it. But when I first started doing this study, when I said to the Lord, as long as you provide at least one student for me to teach, I will continue teaching. And she knew about that long ago, and she has never stopped to demand. But that's the kind of woman I can live with. Again, it's hard to find a woman, but it's not impossible. You have to look in the right places. That's what Solomon missed. We can be wiser than Solomon. Again, he could not, from his position, it would be so hard for him to see that, because he thought he was just getting the best of the best. And then, and just by coincidence, I mean, there are women who are very beautiful and also very good, but the corrupting influence of beauty is such that is so rare. And if you're only looking at very beautiful women, sorry, I've never been very impressed with what I find beneath the skin. It has a bad influence. Just like good-looking guys, there's crummy as I am very often. But you know why it's not as bad? Because for men, I don't get the benefit. I don't have the same benefits they do. It just doesn't work the same for a guy. Yeah, occasionally they'll try to seduce you, but that's not a benefit in my book. Unless you're a corrupt individual, of course. But I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found. I found a man. I found guys that there are great guys out there, men who you could run into. 1 in 1,000. I found men. He likes men better. I get it, because the thing is, men enjoy the relationship with men. Women have a different kind of relationship. Women are different on many, many, many levels. They relate differently. You could find all kinds of whole YouTube channels dedicated to that subject. It's a can of worms I'm never afraid to open, but I'm not going to sort through it all right now, that's for sure, because we're about 2 minutes away from finishing. God hath made man upright. Again, there's not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. He's not saying that man is perfect or anything like that. He's saying, I can find upright men. But even so, they have sought out many inventions. To me, that's also a... Because again, it's not like... Well... that there is a... What I would say is this. The man's conscience, unless a man... Because we have psychopaths who it depends. Like, I don't believe in a bad seed. I remember watching this guy who was a diagnostically, when it comes to his brain, the way it functioned and stuff, he was a psychopath by definition or whatever, by brain scan. And but the thing is, he was raised in a loving environment where this psychopathy only turned into something good. It's like, again, it is not destiny. What we do, well, I do believe in destiny, but what I'm saying is what we're born with is not necessarily our destiny. That while God knows the end from the beginning, we don't. And things change. That's why there's the story of Paul. That's why things do fluctuate, and it is confusing at times because it's like the enemies of God can become your friend. And you can't assume things. Now, overall, mankind does have a conscience and is willing and seeks uprightness. Even the Romans, they had their philosophies of uprightness, as Stoics, and they thought, what is good for man? What is good for man? The Epicureans, whatever they had, there were different philosophies. They're not all the same. Obviously Solomon had a judgment. He would not be a hedonist, though he tried hedonism. He tried it out, didn't satisfy. His soul, again, I think he really wanted. There's nothing quite as nice as a trusted woman as your wife. Like a good woman. There's nothing better in life. He that finds a wife, he that finds a good wife, that's a good thing, Paul says. He that seeketh a wife seeketh a good thing, because the point of a wife is to be a good thing. It's like our relationship should be some sort of mutual benefit for me and thee. Not just, something rules for me, not for thee, or rules for thee and not for me. I'm more in the other camp. I will apply the rules to me that I do not apply to others. That by my example, they may consider and say, well, that guy, look at his conviction. He does those things out of conviction. He doesn't tell me to do them. He tells himself to do them, and he does them. It's like, wow, maybe I want to be like that. That's my idea of that's how the Lord Jesus primarily acted. He lived out what he did. People, and to this day, what is it they talk about? He died and rose again. They barely know what he said. Even though that's so pertinent, they don't know. Inventions, to me, is like schemes and stuff. I'm sure it's something like that. Let me see what the word is. Inventions is Kishabon. Hold on. I'll bring it up quickly. We're going to conclude here. It's like Shabon or something like that. Shabon or Chabonnet, whatever. A contrivance or like a war machine or a mental machination. Man has we have an impulse to do right. And that's why hypocrisy exists, in a certain sense, because we want to look like we're doing right, even if we're not. If we're not doing right, we want everyone around us to believe we're doing right. Why? Because being right is good. Doing the right thing is positive. Doing the right thing is what men ought to do. So we want to be seen to be doing, even if that's not what we're doing. But again, that's someone who does not properly fear God. To understand that, not only God is watching, but also what you do is not just in your own life, it also affects other people. And what you do to other people does resound back to you. With what measure you meet, it will be measured to you. Not just in the world to come, but right now. And life can be painful for you if you want. That's how it goes. God has made man upright. Man has a certain amount of uprightness in us. That's what Paul was talking about when he talked about the law of conscience, when the Gentiles show that they have a law in themselves, when they accuse or excuse one another. The philosophers of the Greeks and Romans had an idea of right and wrong, of justice and rightness. Romans had laws. Sometimes they would be barbaric by our measure, but in their own measure, they were trying to bring about what they saw as justice. And that is in the heart of all men. But because of our lust and because of all the other things, we will use devices and machinations to war against that righteous impulse and to find a way to justify doing evil things. That's why when we do evil things in our country, we justify it. We say, we're blessing Israel. Genociding these people over here, that's blessing Israel. We want to bless them. Now, as insane as that is, because it's no blessing to anyone to be the committer of genocide, that is not a blessing. Giving them more weapons wherewith to slay innocent people, that, to me, it's like giving more cocaine to a crack addict. It's like, what? That we got to bless the coke addict. Give them more coke. More coke. That's God bless Israel. Have some more bombs to to condemn yourself to hell in the sight of God. You're like, what are you doing? That's not blessing, okay? We gotta bless Israel. It's such rote, unthought out garbage, and it annoys me. Like, I want to just squeeze them hard, as my name indicates. Like my hand is like. But the Lord commends only that I put these hands only to work in my garden and for helping others. These hands are not for war. My fingers do not fight. But I carry a great flaming sword, and therewith I will slay. I will not shirk from my duty. No. Anyways, so thank you for joining me. I look forward to being back again tomorrow, most likely. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law.
I will sing unto Yahweh, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider hath he cast into the sea. Yah is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation. My Father